How's it going, everyone? My name is Noah, your coach of the St. Paul Slurpuffs. That's right, we are back in Pokemon Draft League. I'm so excited to be part of another draft league and very excited to announce that I am coaching the St. Paul Slurpuffs in Season 10 of the UBDL VGC League. The UBDL is the Ultra Beast Draft League. And not only is this my first draft league since Gen 7, this is my first draft league ever in VGC format. The previous two draft leagues that I've been a part of were both singles format, so I'm trying something new here. Hopefully I don't completely, fuck it up. My goal is to at least make playoffs, because I've never made playoffs in a league. I think I got 5th in my own draft league. That was like 8 people. So we'll see how this goes. But in this video, I'm basically just going to be going over the team that I drafted to, let you guys know what my thought process was for drafting Mons. I don't want to give too much away about my strategies, because you guys will see those in the battles, because I will be making videos rather for all of my battles. And so you guys can keep an eye out for those coming to the channel within the coming weeks. But first, let's get into the draft. I'm going to go over these in the order that I drafted them. Now, basically, how the drafting for this format worked was that Mons were separated into 6 tiers, basically. S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, D tier, and E tier. We don't have to worry about E tier because I don't have any Mons in E tier. Those are mostly Little Cup Mons plus like Grumpig and Gumshoes, I think. But regardless, so on our teams, we had to draft 1 S tier Mon, 1 A tier Mon, 2 B tier Mons, 2 C tier Mons, 1 D tier Mon, and then we had 3 free picks that we could spend our points on. Now we had a points budget of 300. So we can use that, and we had to use that to get 3 Pokemon, and each tier is a different point level. So like an S tier is 300. So for example, if I were to draft a second S tier, I would have no more points, and I would have to draft my remaining 2 from E tier, which is 0 points. Stuff like that. And then A tier is 200, B tier is 75, C tier is 50, and D tier is 25. And I will go into exactly what I drafted from what tiers and how I used my points. But first off, my first pick. And I didn't go into this with like a firm plan of what I wanted to draft, especially because a lot of these Mons are completely new to me. So I'm just looking at, types and stats and movesets on Showdown, just looking at what I like. Of course, I knew right away what I wanted for my first draft, and luckily no one drafted it, because I don't know if this Pokemon's actually that good. It wasn't my S tier pick. I actually drafted my A tier pick first. But just because I wanted this Mon so badly, mostly just because I think it's funny, I'll give you a hint. For his neutral special, he wields a gun. For my first pick, I grabbed Galarian Slowbro. Again, I just really like this guy, but also I think he has a lot to offer to my team. Poison Psychic is a pretty good typing. And obviously he gets plenty of coverage with those, but also has a very diverse move pool with different types. And not only just attacking, obviously he can be a wall with Regenerator. He's got, very good physical defense and decent special defense too. Pretty much all his stats are pretty decent besides speed. But I could also run Quick Draw, Quick Claw if I want to tempt fate, as it were. That gives me, I believe, a 44% chance of going first each turn. That combination. But also I can run Regenerator to get health back. I can run this thing physical or special. It has 100 base in both attacking stats. So I can run it either way. It gets plenty of moves for either. And yeah. And again, I just like him. I think he's got a funny design. I never played Sword and Shield, let alone the DLC, so I never got to use one of these in-game. So I'm very excited to be using it in this draft league. Now, second, I went ahead and spent 200 of my points right away to get another A-tier Mon, because at this point, I still wasn't quite sure what I wanted for my S-tier Mon. I had a good idea of what I might want, but before I drafted that, I wanted to make sure I got this Mon, because this Mon perfectly complements Galarian Slowbro, and that is Brute Bonnet, the Paradox form of Amoonguss from Scarlet and Violet. Well, Scarlet specifically, because it is the past Paradox form. And literally, this thing resists all of Galarian Slowbro's weaknesses. Galarian Slowbro is weak to 3 types: ground, ghost, dark. Brute Bonnet resists all of those. So either, if I'm worried about Galarian Slowbro being hit by a super effective move, I can either switch into Brute Bonnet, or if both are on the field at the same time, because this is doubles, I can use Rage Powder. And that's another big reason I wanted to draft this, is having Rage Powder in VGC is very powerful. Now, obviously, there are workarounds to it, but it is very handy to have. And also, again, this thing's stats, like, base 127 attack, base 111 HP, 99 in both defenses. Again, the one drawback being that this thing is kind of slow. But it's got a good move pool. Again, I can run Rage Powder. I can run Spore to put things to sleep, which is going to be very handy. I didn't mention this with Galarian Slowbro, but both of these Mons get moves that can heal an ally. Galarian Slowbro gets Heal Pulse. Brute Bonnet gets Pollen Puff, which is not just an attacking move. If you target an ally with it, it heals them. So, those are both really good. And this thing gets access to Substitute? I didn't even know that. I'm just looking at the moveset on Showdown right now. That's awesome. Galarian Slowbro can also recover itself, as can this. Because this thing gets Synthesis. Also Taunt, which is huge. Yeah, all in all, really glad I picked this up. It complements Galarian Slowbro very well. And it also works very well with my next pick, which was me finally grabbing an S-tier Mon, and I went with Torkoal. Now, people may be wondering, of all the, S-tier Mons, because, S-tier, I mean, the most powerful Mons in the game that aren't banned are in here. Examples of some of the other S tiers that people drafted. The person who had the first pick overall grabbed Iron Bundle, one of the most broken Pokemon in the game. That's not banned. Someone got Fluttermane, someone got Chien Pao, someone grabbed Amoonguss, actually. Tornadus, Roaring Moon, Spectrier, Urshifu, Landorus T, Thunderous Eye, Ursaluna, Hydreigon, Chiyu, Rillaboom, Enamorous T. These are all the S tiers that other people drafted. So, in comparison, Torkoal may not seem that great. But the big kicker with Torkoal is the ability Drought. I believe it is I believe it is the only Pokemon in Scarlet and available in Scarlet and Violet to get Drought. Let me double check that. Pokemon with Drought. Because otherwise it's Mega Charizard, who's not in the game. Ninetales, who's not in the game. And Groudon, who, even if he is in the game, is banned. So, Torkoal with Drought is very useful. Not just in general, like, if I want to run a full-on Sun team, which I didn't necessarily draft a full-on Sun team, but, you know, Drought obviously helps with Brute Bonnet because of the photosynthesis, because if Sun is out, photosynthesis just activates. I don't have to, hold the booster energy. So there's that. Also, this thing is very defensive. It has 140 base physical defense. Again, it's pretty slow, but it also has equal attack and special attack, both at 85. This thing also gets access to both hazards with Stealth Rock and hazard removal with Rapid Spin. Will-O-Wisp is also pretty handy on this thing. Shell Smash, if I decide I want to run Shell Smash Torkoal with White Herb or something. You know, all in all, like, even though it may not seem like the biggest threat in S tier, it works very well for my team and gives me a lot to work with. And I also wanted a specific move on this, which I'm not going to necessarily reveal, but people can put 2 and 2 together on what I was looking for with this and another mon I drafted. I know someone in the league already figured it out, which worries me, but I'm hoping not everyone saw that, and I can spring this particular strat on someone and them be none the wiser. But up next, I drafted my first B tier mon, and this is another one. Again, look, going into this draft, I didn't necessarily know exactly what I wanted for my team. I knew I wanted Galarian Slowbro, and there was one other mon I knew I wanted, not necessarily because it is great, but because I like it. And that is Darkspun. Just look at him. He's so cute. Like, I love this thing's design so much. And, like, I feel like this is a mon that people are going to underestimate. Because looking at its stats, it actually has pretty decent stats. I mean, base 80 attack isn't necessarily something to write home about, but base 115 defense And base 95 speed is pretty good. It also gets the ability Well-Baked Body, which raises its defense 2 stages if it is hit by a fire-type move, and it subsequently is immune to fire-type moves. Which is a really interesting and unique ability to have. And again, I have plans for this. And also its move pool is not bad. It gets access to Body Press to take advantage of that defense stat and you being able to increase its defense. It also gets access to Baton Pass in case I want to transfer those defense boosts onto a different Mon. Obviously it gets, standard Play Rough for a physical fairy type move. But it also has Psychic Fangs, Stomping Tantrum, Trailblaze, which also boosts speed if I wanted to make it faster. This thing also gets access to Substitute, Wish, Yawn, Roar, Elemental Fangs. It gets Fire Fang, Ice Fang, Crunch. Yeah, this thing just has a this thing just has a really decent moveset, and I think it's a Mon that people are going to underestimate, but I'm very excited to use it. And then up next, I had another B tier to draft, and I knew I wanted a water type to complete my Fire Water Grass core with Torkoal and Brute Bonnet. Now, I also noticed that I needed something fast. Because apart from Darkspun, my team is very slow. Darkspun is my fastest at 95 so far. And then I've got Torkoal at 20, Galarian Slowbro at 30, and Brute Bonnet at 55. So my team is not very fast. And again, I wanted a water type. Initially, I wanted Inteleon for a special attacking water type, since, a lot of my good attackers so far are physical. But Inteleon got sniped. I also considered Vaporeon. That got sniped. Although I think the person who drafted Vaporeon dropped it, so if I wanted to switch for Vaporeon, I could. But I like the water type that I grabbed. Because not only does it give me a Grass, Fire, Water core with Torkoal and Brute Bonnet, it also gives me a Psychic Dark Fighting core with Brute Bonnet and Galarian Slowbro, who I've already talked about complement each other very well. And that Pokemon is Quaquaval. Now, you may be saying, oh, it's another physical attacker. Yeah, but hey, it's a great physical attacker. It's got 120 base attack. And you may be saying, oh, but it's not that fast. It's 85 base speed. It's slower than Darkspun. That is true, but it also gets its signature move, Aqua Step, which is an 80 base power physical water type move that raises your speed. So I can very easily set up to get this thing faster, and with Moxie, I can also easily raise attack upon KOing something. So this thing is a potential sweeper. Like, this thing can very easily sweep teams if put in the right situation. Right place, right time sort of thing. All in all, I just think this thing is really solid. It gets plenty of really good physical water type moves. Wave Crash, Aqua Jet for priority, Aqua Cutter for high crit ratio, Brave Bird. It gets other optional setup. I can run Bulk Up if I want to. Gets a decent amount of flying coverage, actually. Ice Spinner, I didn't even know it got, but that's cool. Rapid Spin, another Pokemon that can remove hazards, nice. It also gets Swords Dance if I want to just boost attack. I can also pivot out with U-Turn. yeah, very solid mon. I'm not disappointed that I got this as my water type at all, even though I was eyeing Inteleon, because again, now with just 4 mons, I have not counting Doxbun because it's not part of any of my cores necessarily. With just the 4 mons, I've got Grass Water Fire core and Psychic Dark Fighting core, which is really nice. Up next, I have a mon that I have some strats for that I'm not going to divulge in this video because I do not want to give them away. But I drafted Ursaring. And there's a particular reason I wanted to draft Ursaring. This was I believe my first my first C tier pick. There's a particular reason I wanted to draft Ursaring in this draft league, and that is because, well, first of all, it's just a decently strong normal type Pokemon, you know. Base 90 HP, base 130 attack, base 75 and everything else besides speed, where it's a little slow at 55. But 2 great abilities dealing with statuses, either Guts or Quick Feet. So if it gets statused, I can either increase its attack or speed, which is nice. And with those, in combination with the fact that because Ursaluna now exists, Ursaring can run Eviolite to increase those defenses by 1.5 times. I have some strats for this that I'm very excited about, that I hope pan out, actually. We will see what happens. But I'm not going to go any further into specific strats, because I want to keep that a surprise. This is a secret weapon for me, for sure. Up next, I have another Pokemon that I use points for. Up to this point, I was totally prepared to draft a completely different Mon. But then in the middle of the drafting process, someone raised a question. And that question was, what tier is Skeledirge? And as it turns out, I had not even thought of it because I didn't see it on any of the tiers. I, Control F and typed in Skeledirge and it wasn't on the document. So I figured, oh, it must be banned. And then the people in charge of the league were like, oh yeah, we just forgot to put it on the doc. It should be in B tier. And in my brain, I went, well, hold on. I don't know much about the competitive scene of Scarlet and Violet. But I do know that Skeledirge being in B tier is absolutely fucking broken. 2 words. Torch Song. I really don't need to say anything else. Even though I already had a fire type, and as you will see later, I drafted another ghost type, I basically just wanted to get Skeledirge so no one else would have it. And if I decide to go full Sun team, having both Torkoal and Skeledirge isn't necessarily a bad thing. Yeah, so there's not much else to say about Skeledirge at this point. I mean, base 110 special attack, decent defenses and HP. Again, it's kind of slow, but whatever. The other nice thing is I have a lot of slow mons, but Galarian Slowbro also gets Trick Room. So I can do that. But yeah, I basically drafted Skeledirge so no one else would have it. And interestingly, so there's two different divisions for the VGC league of this league. And the guy asking about Skeledirge is in the other division, so we were both able to get Skeledirge. So yeah. Anyway, up next, the mon that I was completely prepared to draft next before I drafted Skeledirge, and thank God no one sniped this from me. I actually really didn't get sniped at all, apart from arguably Inteleon. But again, I prefer having Quaquaval at this point anyway. So next up, I'm looking at my team, and I am noticing a couple things. I have somewhat of a ground weakness. That is my biggest weakness. I have 3 Pokemon at this point that are weak to ground. Galarian Slowbro, Torkoal, and Skeledirge. Now I have answers for ground types. I have Brute Bonnet, I have Quaquaval, but I wanted something else. I also wanted, especially because my team is kind of slow, I wanted a Tailwind user, and I wanted a good special, I wanted a good special attacker. Now, obviously, I have Skeledirge now, but I wanted another good special attacker, and I wanted something with special bulk, because I've got a decent amount of bulk, but most of it is physical bulk. And so all of these things led to one mon that could do all of this, and that is Frostmoth. Now its typing may seem pretty bad. Ice Bug, that's 2 quad weaknesses, but it does get the ability Ice Scales, which is basically Fluffy for special moves, which is insane. It already has a base 90 special defense, so this thing can tank special hits very well. It also gets access to Tailwind, like I said. It also gets access to Snowscape to set up snow, and in tandem with that, Aurora Veil, which is basically reflect and light screen put together. This also gets Quiver Dance if I want to set up. And therefore it can be a potential sweeper. This thing's just good. It's really solid. It covers a lot of things that I wanted on my team. It also is another option for hazard removal with defog. Also, I mentioned Snowscape earlier. That also is helpful if I want to, say, run Blizzard Galarian Slowbro, because it gets Blizzard for a special spread move that doesn't hit my side of the field. So, yeah. All in all, Frostmoth, just really solid for my team. I was considering a couple different ice types here. I considered Articuno for a ground immunity rather than just a resistance. And I also considered Frostlass to have a faster mon that also had ghost typing. But Frostmoth just did more that I wanted to have on my team, and I was able to get an additional ghost type and a ground immunity with my next pick, which was Haunter. Now, Haunter, I mean, this is Gengar on a budget, basically. Like, it's this thing is really good, honestly, for a D tier pick. Because honestly, I was looking at D tier and nothing really stood out to me, necessarily. Except for, like, having a ghost type with, with Levitate. I looked at Haunter, I looked at Mischievous, I looked at Rotom. Haunter was the most appealing because of its stats, and move pool. Because, again, it's just Gengar on a budget, basically. It has 115 special attack and 95 speed, tying it for my fastest Mon. So this thing is really solid, for my team. It also gets access to a lot of, different utility moves that would be very helpful at this point for me. If I want to run Destiny Bond or something, I can do that. Haze or Clear Smog to get rid of the opponent's, stat buffs. Hex, if I want to play that game with statuses and whatnot, because I can, because plenty of my mons have status moves. Perish Song, if I want to be cheeky that way. Taunt. Toxic Spikes, Trick, a fast Trick Room setter as well. Will-O-Wisp. And also, obviously, just a really solid range of type coverage. So yeah, Haunter, even though it's not Gengar, it's the next best thing. And it has Levitate, which Gengar does not anymore. So one might say even better than Gengar in some regard, because it has Levitate still. And then we come down to my last pick. I'm not gonna delve too deep into this one, because at this point I was like really satisfied with my team, and I just had to draft one more Mon because I had to, and it had to be a D tier because of me spending my points on Brute Bonnet and Skeledirge, which were A and B tier respectively, so I only had enough points for a D tier Mon. And I was, I couldn't, again, nothing really stood out to me in D tier except for Haunter. So I was like, okay, what types do I not have that are generally really good to have? Steel type I considered grabbing Fortress, but that would give me 2 quad weaknesses to fire, and I don't really want that. And a lot of the things that Fortress is good at, I have Mons that can do better, like hazards and hazard removal. So I looked at some other useful types I don't have yet. I don't have a dragon type, I don't have a ground type. So I grabbed Gabite. Another non-fully evolved Mon, but again, if I can't have Garchomp, just get the next best thing, 90 attack, 82 speed. Those are base stats, obviously. It's not terrible. And, it's an electric immunity. Yeah. Because I didn't have a ground type, so I don't anticipate using this one much. I'm guessing out of all the members on my team, this is probably the least likely to necessarily make an impact, but there are certainly some situations where I may need Garchomp. Or Gabite, rather, because I don't have Garchomp. I have Gabite. And, it's got a good move pool, I can... It doesn't get Dragon Dance, which is stupid. It gets Stealth Rocks if I need a faster rock setter for whatever reason. Gets Sword Stance. Yeah. Helping Hand. I got that. That could help in certain circumstances. Yeah. I mean, again, I was really satisfied with the rest of my team and didn't feel like I necessarily needed anything else. Like I am really happy with my team overall. I think it's super solid. Again, it's a little on the slow side, but I've got Darkspun, I've got Haunter, I've got Quaquaval. Under the right circumstances, I've got Garchomp or Ursaring. So yeah. I think it's a very well balanced team. I think a big thing I have learned from my previous draft leagues is in my previous draft leagues, I would typically go for all out power. And like just go for attackers. With not much regard for very useful non-attacking moves and bulk. So with this draft league, I definitely wanted to rectify that, especially with doubles. I looked at what I can do differently in doubles than in singles. And I have some really fun strats thought up. Yeah. I am ready to dive right into this league. I do not yet know who I am facing first. Looking at the other teams, there are plenty of other teams that are very scary. And I'm obviously not going to go into every team in this video. But I will go over teams as I battle them, essentially. And yeah, I'll see y'all in the next one for whatever our first battle is. And I'll do this time around. I think I'm gonna do my team builder and battle in one video, as opposed to two separate videos. But yeah, hope you guys enjoy. I hope you're looking forward to rooting on the St. Paul Slurpuffs. And yeah, that's gonna be it. As always, don't have a good day. Have a great day.